Welcome to this bonus episode of the Take a Leap podcast. My name is Leah, and I'm joined today by James.
Hey, guys.
And we want to recap season 1, kind of talk about the behind the scenes, starting a podcast, what does it look like, and how, because this is a spiritual podcast, we have grown, personally and spiritually.
I guess, Leah, you have a very different perspective than I do on the course of the season because you were there for the whole entire season hosting every single episode, and I kind of just appeared halfway through when Josh graduated. You're the only person that's experienced the season as the host who is so involved with all of the conversations. What would you say, looking back on the entire season, what are you proud of? What did you enjoy? What did you learn?
Yeah, that's a good question. I am proud to say that I am the only Take a Leap host who is on every episode of Take a Leap, which it's kind of fun. I think maybe I would say I have learned to delegate and to trust other people. It was hard being the only student who's been here from the beginning and trying to have everyone else see the vision that me and Josh and Ashton, who was before Josh, kind of have been developing for a year, and getting other people on board and seeing the podcast the same way was difficult, and I had to let go a little bit of some things, which in the long run was fine. I was just being stubborn.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I learned to delegate and to kind of just be humble and realize that this project is bigger than just me.
Yeah, there is an aspect of creating the podcast that is like an artistic vision that you had.
It's very subjective. Everyone has a different idea of how episodes should be edited, how social media and thumbnails should be edited. And yeah, so it was kind of difficult at some points. But I think now at the end, we're all very much on the same wavelength, which has been good. But it's hard. It's harder than I thought it would be.
Yeah. I mean, there's also a part of it because it's about something so personal in faith and spirituality. It's kind of a spiritual experience, like going through each episode or preparing for an episode. And I imagine that especially being there from ground zero, like building it from an idea to a vision to a prototype to a season and into a show that's had success in a lot of ways, that's had social media interaction, where we did the live event with Chase and Connor, which we never thought would happen. It's been a spiritual experience, I think, in a lot of ways. Would you agree? Is that putting words in your mouth?
No, I would agree for sure. I think the live event is something that I am also proud of because it was an opportunity that so few BYU students have to not only talk to Chase and Connor from the football team, but to have BYUradio and this camera crew and lighting crew come to support us. We had Sam Payne, who's like the head of radio, bring his personal speakers because the ones in the room weren't working. Like, it was one time that I really felt like everyone was rooting for Take a Leap, and that was a really nice experience. But I do think that there's a spiritual aspect too, because it is a spiritual podcast, but I've also had editing professors who say that editing is the work of revelation. And I think that's really interesting. Because editing is not a one and done type of thing, Like, we go back to episodes and we talk about them. We have these big brainstorming sessions about how can we make this episode better or tighter or, reach an audience better. What kind of intro do we want? So, yeah, I think for sure it's a spiritual process.
I would agree. I feel like it's hard, especially as an editor and as a host at the same time.
Yeah.
Because there's two different spiritual aspects of being an editor and being a host, right? When you're having the conversation with somebody, we're trying to get at their raw emotions and feelings, and we really want a story from them, right? We want something personal. We want something true to who they are and to their experience, and we're just trying to capture that and help them share it. But then as an editor, you're in a completely different position. You no longer have that person with you anymore. You have to kind of interpret what they shared, and choosing what to cut out, choosing what to leave in. I feel like that can be a very sensitive process because you don't want to edit their experience. You don't want to edit their reality. But there is, of course, we're making a product. We have to refine it in some way so that it's consumable. And so I think that I've learned a lot about that as well on Take a Leap, just kind of that process of really loving other people's experiences and being respectful in how we go about sharing and conveying those experiences.
Yeah, because we want to give people a platform to share their voice, right? That's the whole point of our show. But we do, like you were saying, wear a lot of hats at Take a Leap. And I'm kind of wondering, what do you think people would be most interested to know or maybe most surprised by, considering the behind-the-scenes process for Take a Leap?
I remember when I took this job originally, number one, I didn't realize I was going to be working like this for Take a Leap. But number two, I didn't think they would let the students talk at all, let alone be in charge of so much. I thought it would be so supervised because it's a real product going out to real people with a BYU logo on it, right? It's branded. It's official. This is a product that BYU is saying they endorse, and they're trusting us as the students of BYU and as employees of BYU to represent that brand, which can be difficult because BYU is a representative of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and our beliefs. And obviously, we don't speak for the church. We're not in a position to do that, but we are representatives in a sense of the church. And there's a lot that goes along with that in how people view the content we share on social media or the podcast that we make. And so we have to be really conscious and responsible, and they trust us to do that. I mean, of course, there's been listen throughs. Like, people have listened to content that we've made that are full-time employees at BYUradio who work for some of the other shows. But at the end of the day, we're the ones calling the shots on 99% of the content. We're the ones choosing the guests. We're the ones interviewing the guests. We facilitate it all on our own. We schedule it. We record. We do all of that. It's just the students, these part-time students who's trying to fit in 20 hours a week, 15 hours a week, whatever it might be. We're the ones that edit it. We're the ones that make the social media content and promote it and try and share it.
No, it is. Even as you're talking, I'm like, wow, we do a lot here at the podcast. Like, we do all of that? That's crazy. We have so much power and responsibility. And it's stressful at times and overwhelming, but it's also a great honor, I think.
I mean, Leah, what was your reaction when you were told that this was a project that you were going to be involved with? Like, what did you say? Were like, wow, that's super cool? Or were you like, wow, that's really overwhelming? Or like, it's probably never going to go anywhere? Like, what was the reaction? And what was it, 2023?
Oh my gosh, yeah, it would have been 2023. That's wild. Anyway, I was so surprised. I didn't think... Well, we come from a podcast, In Good Faith, which is kind of like our parent show. And on that podcast, it was very unique in that they had the students talk for a few minutes and share their own kind of personal connection to an interview or an episode. And that was very novel for BYU Radio to be doing. And so the idea that we were taking that tiny little bit of time that I was in a podcast and making an entire new show out of it was crazy. I didn't think I was ever very eloquent or spiritual or good at all at doing those little kind of producers chats that we would do for In Good Faith. So I was surprised that anyone was giving me this opportunity, but obviously I was also very excited. It's the only student-run podcast to date at BYU Radio, and we're entrusted, like we were saying before, with so much responsibility.
It's very humbling, I would say, because it wasn't what we were hired for specifically. In my interview, I was not asked about, would you feel comfortable hosting a podcast? I don't even remember if it came up. I guess they might have briefly mentioned that we speak a little bit, like in the In Good Faith episodes, but
it was mentioned. I was in your interview.
She was there. It is true. Leah has been here for much longer than I have.
Yeah.
But that was not something that I was focused on. I wasn't thinking about that because at the time before, when I applied, I was like, there's no way they're going to let us do that. There's no way we're going to speak. Like, that would be so cool, but there's no way that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And to think going from that perspective to now, like looking back and like, dang, I've talked a lot. Talked on In Good Faith about really heavy topics. And like Leah said, I also felt like I wasn't very eloquent or well-spoken, or I felt like I talked too much then. And then to see now some of the interviews we've done that we can be proud of, that we feel we did a good job, not that we're perfect, because again, this isn't what we study. This isn't what we set out to do for our careers. And so to have this opportunity, it's really a privilege and a blessing and an honor, like Leah, you were saying.
It's crazy to think that I went from a room with Heather and Steve where they genuinely would have to be pointing at me in order to get me to talk, to hosting this live event when I was asking football players questions. Like, how is that at all what happened? I don't know, but it did. Go us. I'm proud of us.
Yeah, let's go. Good job, Leah.
Good job, James.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. So we've talked a lot about the process, what we've learned. We've talked a little bit about some of the guests. Are there any guests you want to highlight, Leah? Anybody that you thought really shared something profound or something that's, I don't know, maybe affected how you live your life? That's a really big thing to say.
No, it is, but I do have an answer. The first person that came to mind is Josh. I feel like we need to give Josh a shout out in this bonus episode. He was here, hosted, over half?
He hosted the original 7, and then he hosted probably
10 more, I think.
Yeah, probably half of what we've got currently.
Anyway,
more than
Josh
half.
was instrumental in formulating the Take a Leap process and like half of the episodes that are out right now. So shout out Josh. Genuinely could not have made the show without him. I feel like I keep saying genuinely. Don't know why. I'm just in a very genuine mood today.
So was Josh.
Very
genuine guy.
Very genuine guy. But we wish Josh the best in Texas. And anyway, on a more serious note, to answer your question, the person that came to mind was changemaker Matt Lowe. I don't even think anyone realized this at the time, but that interview made me cry. And I was sitting in this room alone just because of the way that our studios are set up. It's kind of difficult to have 2 hosts. But anyway, I was sitting in a room alone and I was crying. Matt was talking about just kind of how everything happens for a reason. And he was being very humble and talking about how he went blind at the age of 16. And I have had my own kind of health struggles and difficulties. And it was hard to think about this person who is so humble and looking at the challenges that, God has given them. And just the humility and grace that he faced them with is something that I truly aspire for. So I think about that one pretty much every day.
That one was really powerful. I remember listening to it. Mm-hmm. And there's a moment when he's kind of talking about his health challenges where he's going blind because he used to play hockey and he wanted to play like professional hockey, right?
Yeah.
And there's like in the beginning when it's first happening, he's like, oh, this will get better and then I'll go back to playing hockey. Like plan A is still on. Mm-hmm. And then there's a moment when you have to accept that plan A is not the plan anymore.
Yeah.
And I've had similar things in my life with health challenges and with sports in particular as well that I won't go into. But it's very challenging to have that moment when you realize that you cannot do plan A anymore, that plan A is not possible. And then to have, right, the humility and faith that you were mentioning, to trust God that my plan A might be cool and fun, but God's plan A is good and great. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot more important than cool and fun. And I'm sure it'll be cool and fun too when we get there. But it's really difficult to accept that.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be my answer for the, interview that probably stuck with me the most. James, do you have a different one that you were thinking of? A different one?
That's a really good question. I'm trying to think of who comes to mind. I think I want to mention Amin Asr, honestly, because I feel like what he talked about was really important to me personally. And I know this isn't something that we've mentioned a lot on the show, but I mentioned it in that episode, right? Because it's not really relevant most of the time, but my grandmother is Korean. And that, for me, growing up was something that was difficult or something that I didn't really resonate with or realize how unique it was at the time. And for me, it's something that I want to be more proud of and more a part of my experience and respectful towards her, because her experience is very different than mine. And she loves me so much. And respecting her and loving her with all of that in mind is really important to me. And I think Amin touched on this idea. For him, it was cultural, but also religious. For me, it's mostly just cultural. But the idea of like when he was younger, he felt afraid or embarrassed of his mom wearing a headscarf. Whereas we want to have a society where nobody feels that way, right? I just think that really resonated with me, Amin's episode, of kind of reconciling that. When there's a moment when he's talking about he's in Thailand and his brother's talking to him, and he's like, "Are you your mother's son?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" It's because you're not living like it. You're not acting like it. And to see him now that he's been able to create this content that's specifically curated for Muslim kids, that he's filling a gap that was lacking for him, I think that's really inspiring.
That's really sweet. What has been an interview or an episode that surprised you the most?
An interview or an episode that surprised me the most? We're talking about surprised, like not like that was the coolest or the most fun, but like something that like...
I would say surprised.
Came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Honestly, the thing that surprised me the most, Eleni asked me to smell a Red Bull at one point during our interview. And, that sounds weird, but it was actually kind of a fun moment for everyone involved. I've still not tried the flavor that she was offering, but, to each their own.
There's still time. Yeah, that was a very fun interview. I like talking to Eleni a lot. Another interview that we did that kind of surprised me was Gracie Morbitzer. I really liked the way that she talked about artwork and her process going through the whole thing, making these saints more modern.
I mean, we've interviewed a lot of artists, I guess, in different ways.
Yeah.
Right. We talked to musicians and we talked to Gracie's kind of a different aspect of art.
Yeah, it was very unique. So at this point, our listeners are probably just on the edges of their seats wondering what is next for the Take a Leap podcast.
It's a good question.
And that's kind of why we wanted to make this bonus episode, because we don't really know. Take a Leap was made largely as an experiment because we are all students and we are, a rotating staff. So we don't really know what's next ever. But we're hoping to have another season after the summer, when we come back from summer vacations and internships, etc. Yeah,
definitely. You can look out for us on social media throughout the summer. We'll still be putting up content on there and celebrating the wonderful interviews and experiences and stories that we've heard so far, and just kind of preparing everything, making sure all the ducks are in a row for the fall so we can come at you again with some really special interviews with some really special people. But like Leah said, the staff's rotating. There's constantly new students being added to the team and people who are graduating or leaving for other opportunities. And if we don't get to see you again, if this is goodbye, we've loved being here with you. We've loved being able to share time with you. Thank you for listening and experiencing the stories that our guests have shared with us. We're really grateful to everyone who's taken the time to listen to Take a Leap, and we hope to have you back in the fall.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the first season of Take a Leap. We're so grateful for all of our wonderful guests who shared their stories, their time, their talents, for their faith, and for yours. It wouldn't have been possible without all of our wonderful guests, but this show also wouldn't have been possible without our wonderful production team. Thank you so much to Josh, who we talked about in the episode. Thank you so much to Leah. Thank you so much to our production team, who you've seen on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, if you pay attention to those, which you should. Check it out. But Aaliyah Ebert, Jackie Durfee, and Soraya Pearson have contributed so much to the show. We're so grateful for all of their wonderful hard work, and we're excited for the next chapter of Take a Leap. Take a Leap is a production of BYU Radio.